Yeah, sir. I think let us start our session. Almost all the participants have joined. Lakshmi teacher, let us start our session.
Oh, okay, teacher, we'll start. Ambli
Okay, sir.
teacher, shall we start the session? Okay, we will start. We will start the session, say the teacher.
Okay, thank you, Lakshmi. Very good afternoon, all the participants. Welcome to the third day of webinar on revisiting research paradigm. Today we have Dr. Samir Babu M, Assistant Professor, Department of Education, University of Kerala, to discuss about the quantitative research method. He is a diligent, innovative, and focused educational professional with over 6 years of experiences in reputed institutions like Central University of Rajasthan and Delhi University. In a short span of time, he has been able to make contributions in all the fields of education, such as administration, planning, teaching, training, and research. He has an excellent academic credentials. He got PhD degree from Jamia Millia Islamic University in the year 2013 and M.Ed from University of Calicut in 2005. He is the first rank holder in political science at postgraduate level. Not only that, he has 2 more master's degree, one in public administration and the other in psychology. He is also a gold medal winner in PG diploma in distance education. He has availed many major and minor research projects from ICSSR, Pandit Madan Mohan Malavya Mission of Teacher Education, Center for Disability Studies, and the like. There are a number of research papers in national and international journals, and moreover, he is a member of editorial board of reputed journals and a lifelong member of many research organizations. I'm extremely happy to welcome such a resourceful and ingenious personality, Dr. Samir Babu M, as a resource person of our webinar. On behalf of all the participants and NSS Training College, Ottapala, I welcome Dr. Samir Babu M for the presentation. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, it's over to you.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. Let me
Okay,
open
thank you,
my
sir.
presentation. I think its PowerPoint is visible. Is it visible?
No, sir, it's not visible now.
Okay. Let's a moment. I hope that it will come.
Okay.
I started sharing. Has it come?
Not yet, sir.
Okay, I stop and do it again. Sorry.
Yeah, now it's okay, sir. It's visible now.
Okay. But I click stop sharing. Let's wait to redo it.
Okay.
Okay. PowerPoint is there, right?
No, sir, we can't see your PowerPoint, but the screen is there.
Okay. I stop sharing. I not stop sharing. Let's wait. So I'm sorry. I hope that is all right now. Has it come? Wait, I'm waiting. I don't know. Maybe issues of connection. It's all right here.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, let me begin. Thank you, the organizers, NSS team, for giving me an opportunity to interact with a group of academicians all over India. Thank you. Now, the concern today, I would like to tell you something about quantitative research. And I'm not sure about something innovative or new, but I think that let us collectively discuss something specific in terms of the quality of the quantitative research. Right. Now, concerning the research, especially, I'm talking about a social science research. It's a meaningfully designed inquiry or structured analysis that has been carried out or that is being carried out to find out solution to a problem, simply giving a definition to arrive at a conclusion, as well as to explain a phenomena in a novel perspective. This is altogether, when we talk about any kind of research, this is certain concerns of research. Altogether, we can call it as any research is leading to innovations in society or improvement or something, some kind of scaffold to the social order. That is, it generally aims at social welfare. Now, when we come to the research, especially a quantitative research, of course, the beginning stage, let me detail out the beginning stage, even though it has been discussed in the previous speakers, the previous stage by speakers. Let me give a clarity regarding what we have to, where we have to begin. Of course, the selection of the problem is one of the first stage all of us have to do as researchers. Similarly, then comes to the significance of the research and related literature. Here, one thing I have to point out is where we fail. Of course, when we look into certain reports, especially the master dissertations and MPhil dissertation, as well as the PhD dissertation, some of the scholars, a few of them, I'm not speaking about the general, most of them or some of them are not up to the level in what we can say is collating the previous studies in order to find out the exact problem. People are generally going for looking into some specific problem, innovative in its title, but not in its approach most of the time. So when a researcher comes to the field of research, he or she has to think, why do I research? Why do I research on this problem? Why not others? Why do this is my research concern? This kind of questions normally the research scholars are not asking to, or they are not having, not having an introspection kind of thing. Because as I perceive, research is not everyone's cup of tea. It is not everyone's business. Those who have a research mind or clear-cut research ideas in mind or a spark in mind, then only they can go for research. It is not based upon a fellowship or kind of thing. It is not based upon a kind of admission or a promotion in a position. It is, research is a kind of innovation, and it is a kind of attitude from part of a researcher that we have to have a clarity. When we are selecting or selecting the option of doing a research, we have to have this in mind. And when we look into the significance of the study, need and significance of the study, once students start writing the need and significance of the study, most of the dissertations and theses, they write offhand without any references, without any court of studies. They write like anything, an essay like anything they will write. Of course, as like a public speaker or like a political speaker, they cannot write or they cannot write as such in a research study, the need and significance study. But people start writing this and there will not be much criticism from the part of evaluator. That is quite unfortunate. I don't know why this happens. There should be study based. Once we highlight a problem, once we highlight any study, including quantitative study, once we highlight it, we have to properly give the significant studies related. Why I select it? What is the opinion of the other researchers, similar kind of researchers, similar kind of parameters, similar kind of construct, what the other persons and researchers research on. Why I select this? Why I cannot select the other? Why this strategy I am going to select? Why not the other strategy? So we have to have a clarity based upon the studies. I'm talking about the needed significance of the study. When we write a needed significance of the study, it should be clearly, thoroughly researched, and the reviews, all the reviewed researchers and its findings related should be there in your need and significance of study. Not exactly as a big sentences. It should be collated. You have to have a synchrony between or among the studies, and you have to write it. Then only powerfully you can derive at a conclusion. Okay, my research is this. I can highlight that this is, nobody has much attempted on this problem. Otherwise, okay, this is significant. There are more. I mean, sometimes people write now. There is no powerful strategy to address the social skills, no powerful strategies to address the activity space of the students. That is why I have selected the problem. Not this way. What is the result of the researchers? That has to be the significant. When come to method, next is method. When comes to the method part, it should also be innovative in nature. Of course, we talk about the innovation. One of the characteristics of research, as we always highlight, that innovation. There should be innovation. What about the methodological innovation? When we say, I'm not talking about everyone. When I have a limited space experience, with my limited experience, I have experience with Mahatma Gandhi University, the Library of Calicut University, University of Kannur, University of Kerala. I'm talking about then some of the other universities outside Kerala. When we go to the methodological part, people fail to experiment on innovations. Why this happens, I don't know. With my limited knowledge, I tell you that there should be innovations in methodology. People, if it is an experiment study, there will be most of the time single group retest post-test method. If it is an, it's also one of the quantitative method, experimental. So there will be single group retest method. Otherwise, there will be two group, non-equivalent. There will be control group and experimental group and comparison. What about the other? There are families of designs in experimental. There are different methodologies available. What about the case analysis? Do we experiment with case studies as a prominent method of research? What about grounded theory? Why we are lagging behind in experimenting grounded theory like researchers? Why there is no research of proper observation studies? What about the interview, in-depth interview of 30-40 pages questionnaire, interview schedule or interview guide? Why we are not experimenting on this kind of methodologies? Why we are not having diary methodology in our studies? Sometimes we add that this is multi-method, this is mixed method, I have added, then they will go for 2-3 teachers and 5 or 10 students and come up with some evidences and explain it quantitatively, then say that it is a multi-method or it's a mixed method design. This is the only thing happening. There are less innovations happening in research, especially I'm talking about the psychological and educational researchers. In most of the cases, methodological innovations are very few in, I'm talking about Indian context. Doesn't mean that no one is experimenting. I'm talking about generally, or a good majority is not experimenting on methodology. Now, I'm not talking about the types of research, quantitative, qualitative paradigms and all. But one thing I have to mention here is that in the most of the theses, when we evaluate, when we find out the open defenses and vivacities, we listen to speakers, that is the presenters, that we experimented multi-method or mixed method study. What is a mixed method? I have done a quantitative study to my experimental research. It was quantitative. Then I conducted qualitative research. Where is your qualitative research? Then they will say that I have experimented, I have asked the significance of my strategy, whether it is appropriate or not. I have developed some 5 or 10 questions and gave to 20 teachers and 50 students, for example. Then I collected the data and analyzed. Then what will be the funny thing is that they will write that 25% of the students are opine that it is highly effective. 70% of the students opine that this is effective. 5% of the students opine that this is all right, almost okay, we are comfortable with it, not up to the level. For example, where is the qualitative data here? This is quantitative. People misunderstood that this is qualitative. They have an approach of qualitative. They have conducted an interview. It is a minor, very minute level interview. When we talk about the research methodology of interview, it is very significant and very comprehensive. When we are going to an in-depth interview, it should have pages and pages of schedules in the interview. We may not have much participants to get interview, but there will be lots of questions to address the construct or address the phenomena in detailed manner. But I don't know why the examiners are not focusing on that. The approach or the methodology you follow is some element, it is, or technique, you have a qualitative technique of interview and case study. But when you write it here in this way, numbers, it is clearly numerical, that is quantitative. Don't go for such case. I can tell you that you may have different opinion. We can discuss it later. And if you're writing in number, everything is quantitative. So that is one thing I have to explain you in this case. Now comes to this is not exactly, I have already explained, and comes to the hypothesis part. Objectives also, we know that objectives, once we state the objectives, there are still confusions about writing the research questions and objectives. Once it is from my limited reading, I have an experience of reading that I concluded that research questions should be very strong questions to address the core of the issue. That should not be, sometimes people write research question for every objective, then there will not be any meaning in that. Once you address the research as a whole, you will have some cardinal questions. So you raise it as powerful questions, that is actually termed as research questions. In certain significant studies published by certain reputed journals, they highlight some of the research questions only. But when we talk about the objectives, these are very specifically mentioned one by one. That is what you are doing actually in this research process. Everyone you are writing specifically in a specific order. That is actually the objectives, and it should be very self-explanatory and every layman can understand. They have to have a clarity by reading the objective. This is to analyze something. This objective is to find out relations between X and Y. This is to compare X and Y in terms of this and that particular specific criteria or characteristics. This way it has to be very clear. Now comes to the hypothesis. When hypothesis, with my reading and when I read it, I got an understanding that hypothesis, when we write this as a major research hypothesis in a study, it has to be a positive hypothesis. In the sense, research hypothesis should be either directional or non-directional hypothesis. Sometimes in some of the research studies, they mention that null hypothesis. All the hypotheses are null hypothesis. Actually, this is what I perceive is that if you have any crossing, you can have crossing later when we discuss it later. Where what I perceive is that hypothesis, when we define and find out the meaning of hypothesis, it is to give meaning to the research. It is a guiding principle to the researcher. It gives a way to the researcher. Then, if it is stated in null form, where is the guiding? Where is the guidance? Where is the light to the researcher? When we read all the books, any books, you take the Western Can or McBurney, LRG, whatever it is, if you read it, it states that it is a guiding principle. It works as a guiding principle to the researcher. It is a light way to the research. Whereas if it is null hypothesis, what is the guidance over there? So what I perceive is that the research hypothesis is not a casually developed statement. It is a thoroughly built process. It is a study based. It is an intellectual guess based on the studies. If it is an exploratory study, for example, you may not be having lots of studies to correlate or associate with it, or you may not have proper related literature and summarize. Okay, in that case, what you have to do is you can write based on your experiences, right? But if it is a study, for example, let me take a self-concept, whether self-concept is related to academic performance. Self-concept and academic, it is much, there are plenty of studies in India, inside India and outside India. There are plenty of studies. It is not a new variable. So you have lots of studies, hundreds of studies to review based on that. Once you review it, take a measurement, how many of them have reported positively stated, positive relationship. How many of them have reported negative relationship? How many of them have reported no significant relationship? There is a relationship, but it is not significant. Based on this, only we are going to write, we have to write the hypothesis. If it is a very positive, or most of the studies report that there is a positive relationship between intelligence and, performance and self-esteem or self-concept, you just write that there is a positive relationship. Then you are writing an alternate hypothesis. If it is stress and academic performance, when for example, 75% of the studies report that there is a negative relationship between stress and academic performance, then your hypothesis will also be in that line. That is studied hypothesis. That has to be the hypothesis style of writing. So there is a negative relationship between stress and academic performance. For example, sometimes you are confused. You have a few sets of studies, few data, and based on that, you got some of them, half of them have positive, half of them have negative, or there is a mixture of. You cannot find out that what kind of relationship will it be when you study on a specific geographical area. In such a case, what we have to do is we can write a non-directional hypothesis. There is a relationship between. In the first case, we wrote there is a positive relationship between X and Y. Second case, there is a negative relationship between X and Y. Here we write, there is a relationship between X and Y. I don't confirm whether it's positive or negative. Then, when it comes to the null hypothesis, whenever we are going for a statistical test of hypothesis, once you have a hypothesis in quantitative research, you have to test it properly using appropriate statistical techniques. In such a context, you have to test whether the hypothesis is rejected or failed to reject. That is the later stage. That is, once you collect the data, analyze it, and then you have a result, and later on you find out whether it is rejected or failed to reject. That we have to write. And one more thing I'm giving you here itself, that is, once you write hypothesis and the testing of hypothesis, there is a tendency, that is, casual writing and research writing is different. I'm not telling you, and I'm not giving you an argument that I am very powerful in writing research. No, I'm a beginner on it. But with my limited experience, I identified that research has its own language. We cannot write casual or simple or media language into research, or simple, chit-chat language in a research paper or research report. Sometimes we write whether those sentences are required, write it. But which one is not required, don't go for writing unnecessary sentences in research report. So once we got the hypothesis and we are going to test it. So based on this readings, I identified that we are not writing the term accepting hypothesis. We write that we reject null hypothesis, or we fail to reject null hypothesis when based on the statistical calculation. There is no term from the standard textbooks. You cannot find out that standard term accepting the null hypothesis or accepting the hypothesis. You can write that we are simply testing the hypothesis, whether null hypothesis is rejected or whether it is not rejected, or whether we fail to reject null hypothesis. This is the writing standard actually. So we can have a discussion on that later. Now come to the designing part. I have already told you designing, methodology, everything. I'm not going to the depth of that. Later also we'll have this kind of discussion. Then come to the sampling. This is another funny aspect in the social science researchers all over India, especially. I'm not still I'm talking you that it is not generalized. There are few exceptions. There are very rigorous researchers and research scholars, they are following strictly the sampling parameters as such. When we talk about the sample, see, take the list of dissertations. We have Shodhganga. Why we are hiding everything? We have Shodhganga. All the research studies are uploaded over there. So see the methodology part. They have beautifully explained. I have followed a simple random sampling. I have followed a stratified random sampling. I have followed a proportionate sampling, systematic sampling. How this is possible? This is the question. If it is a big project of million dollars projects, then it's maybe possible. Otherwise, especially when we are talking about a larger parameter of, we have a geographical area larger. For example, let me give you an example with an example. Suppose we are talking about Kerala. Since the organizers are from Kerala, that is why I'm taking the example as Kerala. So we are talking about secondary school students of Kerala. So you have to collect the data. So for the sake of, there is a notion that, okay, sampling should be normality. There should be normality. Sampling should be random sample. That is probability sampling. You have to take only probability sampling. So normal notions are the simple random sampling. Terms I'm talking about. Simple random sampling, stratified random sampling. This is most common among the researchers, especially I'm talking about psychological and educational researchers. Is it possible if your geographical area is the entire Kerala and the secondary school students? I am asking you a question. If you have done this way, what is the total number of your students? Then the research scholar will not have any answer. Once you don't know the specific number of the sample, how can you go for a random sample, especially a simple and systematic random sample? How can you go for a stratified random sample? The prior criteria is that there should be a definite population. Then come to the selection. When you are selecting, you are going to 3-4 nearby schools and writing that this random sample, this simple random sample. Is it right sample? No, never. It is not possible. If you are selecting the random sample from the entire population of secondary school students of Kerala, you are not supposed to collect the data in this way. Let me take the example again. So all the secondary schools, do you have a list of all the secondary school students of Kerala? If you select the sample, what is your proportion? What is your number? For example, 1,000 students I am taking. What is the population? Take it is a 10 lakh population of 10 lakh secondary school, or 3 lakh, for example. 3 lakh students are studying in the secondary school students of Kerala. Then you have to take 1,000 sample, 1,000 only. How do you select it? You are just taking the entire schools, taking all the students, writing one by one or coordinating all the sheets. Then either through lot method or systematic sample, you are taking the 1,000. So one student from out of 1,000, maybe 50 or 60 from one district. So they will be distributed all over the district, all over the Kerala. Is it possible to visit all the schools of Kerala for collection of PhD data? Literally, it is not possible. But people write, I have taken random sample. Take a district, it is also not possible. Take an educational sub-district, or we can say educational sub-district, may be possible because you have 5 or 10 schools. Out of the 10, then if you approach the schools, do they allow you to take 1 or 2 students from one class to take data? Oh, all the 17 number, roll number 17 and roll number 25 from class A. Go to roll number 26 and 32 from class B. Roll number 50 and 79 from class C. Is it possible? Will the school authorities allow you to collect the data in this way? It's risky. So better is the possible sample, you just go for a possible sample. What I perceive that most of the cases, only cluster sampling is the only possible random sample or multi-stage cluster sample. Multi-stage, we are dividing into different clusters, and then we are taking whole clusters to sample. This is the only possibility of sampling, but this is very funny to see all these stuff. So we have to have clarity in this. Another thing is this tool. I'll talk to the tools and techniques. Then tools, most of us, uh, we don't have a clarity regarding how to prepare a tool. What are the parameters of the tool? So somewhat we are managing this. There are 7 steps, but we just skip some steps. How can we write that 1 or 2 steps skipping, and it is why we are highlighting? People are having a tendency to highlight the title. Okay, my study is brain compatible learning strategy to, and it is through project method, and then how whether it is enhancing achievement or not. Beautifully, they state the title, but they lose in terms of the technology. Research is not lies upon its title. It is not on the beauty of the pages. It is the methodology. If methodology is rigorous, research is all right. Does it matter the research topic is not very new or not? It is much research. It is not a matter. Matter is whether the methodology is sound enough to prove the result, whether the tools or measures are rigorously developed or not. But most of the even research, I'm talking not about the research scholars, even research guides and research organizations are not really depending upon all these parameters. So when tools, how do we develop a tool? Which kind of tool is possible? Can you write a tool in 1 day and publish or collect the data in next day? It is not possible, but many of the research scholars are doing without preparing the tools, without proper homework or analysis. Similarly, the techniques also. I'll come to that later. Now, one more thing I have is a general criteria I have to tell. One more thing is that related to the discussion. Once we are discussing most of the theses, I'm talking about not all the PhD theses, but most of the master dissertations, we find that discussion part is zero, no discussion. Once your research is not having a discussion, that means you did nothing. As I perceived is that if you have not discussed the result in terms of the previous studies and reviews you have collected, the research is zero, because it is then only you can find out whether the result is significant or not, whether the things are all right or not, whether your assumptions and arguments are valid or not. You have to judge upon the validations and results based on the previous studies. So once we write the review, sometimes people, this is also a very common notion that completing review in 6 months, then writing the methodology. Sometimes people bifurcate the research process into this type of categories. Why this research review is not possible in a day? Till the submission of your thesis, till the submission of your report, till the publication date of your paper, you have to add properly the reviews, because review gives you new knowledge. Review gives you whether the new study is in line of your study or against the result of your study. So this has to be a rigorous process. Review is not to be merely as a chapter. It has to be depicted in the need and significance of the study, as well as very significantly in the discussion of the result. Now, plagiarism, copyright licenses and all, I just mentioned it over, and manual of citation. Just frankly, you just have a thought of the writing style of the researchers in our departments, universities and colleges. You might have your own experience. How many of them are clearly writing in a manual? In most of the social science people follow American Psychological Association manual. Do you follow strictly the American Psychological Association manual? Does your organization have a rigorous methodology of teaching the manual to your students? We have powerful programs now in PhD. What is this? It is a coursework. 6 months or 1 year you have to undergo coursework. But still, it is very unfortunate to say that there is no standardization of the coursework. Certain universities are not at all running a coursework. Finally, there will be an examination. At the same time, certain universities, I have found out some universities, I was a part of that university, they were very rigorous, very meticulously conducting and organizing, and many people even lose their coursework. They have to repeat again for writing. But whether it is happening in our university, my institution, let us think whether if we pass the research scholar, whether they are rigorously, they are eligible for getting an entry to the next stage or not. We have to think all this. When it comes to the AP, American Psychological Association, writing, most of the thesis writers are not following strictly the manual of writing. MLA, Modern Language Association manual, some of the language people follow. Harvard Association manual and Chicago manual, there are certain journals, they follow these manuals. American Sociological Association, AAA, American Anthropological Association, there are many manuals. We generally follow, especially the people of education, people of psychology, social work, geography, medicine, management, commerce, these fields, these are familiar. That is, we follow American Psychological Association manual. I'm not talking about the references. There is a misconception that this is the writing of references. Very poor, most of the research scholars have this misconception. Sometimes we surprise why people are talking about. They are concentrating on the writing of the references in APA. No, this is the only parameter. Writing reference is only one parameter of manual. There are specificity in text writing. Admissible sentences from a single thing. How to write exact quoting in parentheses. How to write the paraphrased quoting in parentheses. There are certain how to write the heading of your table, how to write the, how to structure your table, how to write your figure, what is the length and breadth proportion of your table. Everything is mentioned in the manual. It is hundreds of pages is devoted to explain this manual by American Psychological Association. Why we are not? We are always struggling and we are always having discussions on increasing or improving quality publications. We don't have quality publication. We are poor. We don't have CARE listed journals. Our journal is not getting enlisted in the CARE. Why? Because we don't have a practice of this type of rigorous mechanisms. So that has to develop a culture. Now come to the research analysis part, pure quantitative. I am coming to the pure quantitative. I'm not highlighting the scales of measurement here. Once we develop a scale, there are parameters, special parameters there are. How do we scale this? If it is a quantitative type of study, it relies upon a measurement. Measurement means a tool to collect the data. So here, a tool, if you are developing a tool, what are the assumptions we have to have? One, initially, we just identify the nature of the variable that we are going to assess. Whether it is a nominal variable, whether it is having some ranking parameter, whether it is a proper independent interval, that is exact values we are taking into account, whether it is a ratio scale. So this has to have a clarity before entering into the development of the scales. Similarly, when we are talking about the test that we can follow, we are not taking a test based on the previous test. Okay, this person has, Mr. X has used this test. Okay, I also use the test. Not this way. Sometimes the failure of the research scholars, I noticed, is that they depend upon not the textbooks, but the previous theses and dissertations. This is a wrong way. You can refer to have a glimpses of the ideas and processes they have come across and they have detailed out in their thesis. But never ever go for referencing the thesis as a whole. You can write if it is a review, it's one of the reviews for you, then just go and write the research based on that. The other things never go for copying, because if they have written something blender or some unethical things or things, then you just simply, if you copy it will be like that. Similarly, I can highlight in this blunder type of things. I don't know whether it's a blunder or not, but to me it is a blunder. Like writing the suggestion for further research. Writing the suggestion for further research, sometimes I laugh at this type of writing. Oh, you can, now this is conducted on government school students. You can experiment the same strategy among private school students. Now we have tested this among rural students. You can go for urban school students. Now we have, our study is on secondary school students. You just go for higher secondary school students or college students. What stupidity it is. Really, the suggestion for further research should not be this way. It is people, especially the learned professors, will tell you just go to the research studies, take the last pages, there will be suggestion for further research, read it and grasp some ideas and come up with certain innovation. This was the, normally the senior research supervisors direct their students this way. But if the situation is this way, what will they get? The suggestion for further research is strong indication to further research. I have experimented on this variable, on this strategy X, but with my limited time or with my limited duration, I could not complete everything in a clear-cut manner. So there are some shortcomings or there are some innovative ideas in my mind. So I have to write it over there. Okay, the new experimenter, the new researcher can take this as their study. For that, we are writing suggestion for the research, not for misleading the students. So this has to be. So my point is that you should not go to such kind of things. Now come to the testing. So there is a kind of, there are, when we talk about the test, based on the scaling, we have two kinds of tests, parametric as well as non-parametric type of test. Type of test that is non-parametric, this is not based on a normal distribution. That is, if your distribution is not normal, you have to use non-parametric test. What people do is, what people go for is, they select an idea. Okay, this is comparison. Okay, I'll go for t-test. This is comparison of three groups. I'll go for a one-way analysis of it. This is the wrong notion people are having. This is not a correct information. It is possible when the distribution is normally distributed. For every test, before administering or before calculating based on a test, go for its assumption. One-way ANOVA, what are the required assumptions? Linear regression, what are the assumptions as a researcher I have to look into? What type of variable should it be? What should be the sample size? What should be the things like normality and all? So we have to have this kind of mechanisms before administering a test. So if it is a non-parametric test, any calculations we can go for non-parametric. That is, statistical tests which are not based on normal distribution are termed as distribution free test of non-parametric distribution, non-parametric test. There is no normality, of course. Assumptions of standard tests are not applied. I told you, if one-way ANOVA, there will be one variable, metric variable. Metric variable means either interval or ratio. That is not a metric variable. In one-way ANOVA, one variable should be a metric variable, and the variable, the data should have been collected through random sampling method. Then we have to ensure that normality is ensured and adequate sample size should be there. Plus another variable should have minimum 3 categories in one-way analysis. But these assumptions are, if it is you are not able to fulfill any of the assumptions, you can go for what's alternative non-parametric statistics. Okay, similarly, if it is a small sample, people even try the correlation, product moment correlation for a small sample. One-way ANOVA for a small sample, t-test for a small sample. It is not required actually. It is suggested that if it is small sample and it is not normally distributed, go for non-parametric statistics. When it comes to parametric, let me take one. Data expressed in absolute values and not in rank. That is the measurement, the parameter of measurement, the variable should be measured in metric. That is either interval or ratio scaling should be there for the measurement. It is based on the normal distribution. You have to ensure that the normality is all right. Depends upon the validity, all the assumptions are fulfilled, then only you can go for parametric test. It uses interval scale that we have already explained, not absolute values. So we have to have clarity of this. Observation must be independent. If it is ranking or if it is categories, we will have more people with same kind of score. So here, if it is parametric, everyone will have different score. That is independent observation. Sample should have nearly equal variance. That is known as homogeneity of variance. If we have various samples, for example, we generally are not going for taking various samples to check the homogeneity of variance, but it is assumed that it should have homogeneity of variance. If we are population variance have more or less equality, we may have a broad area and we delimit it to a specific area like a district. All Kerala, we are not collecting the data. I'm collecting the data from a specific district, Calicut, for example. So Calicut is my population. Then I'm drawing the sample from Calicut only. Similarly, I can have another district, Kottayam or Kannur as district as a population. So if we have different populations and the variance should be more or less equal, that is known as homoscedasticity. So these are assumed. Now come to the statistical part. Based on these two characteristics, that is the parametric and non-parametric nature, we have an idea what I take, which type of test I am going to take. Now, we know that central tendency, dispersion or deviation we are calculating generally, that is as descriptive statistic. Here central tendency, people start writing. I was also doing that earlier in my, in my PhD thesis also there. But now I realize that central tendency has its own meaning. We are not supposed to do all the central tendency values for a single variable. If it is a nominal variable, go for mode. If it is a nominal kind of variable, go for mode. If it is an ordinal kind of variable, go for median. Or if you have some calculations based on the norm setting and all, you can go for median. Otherwise, if it is an interval or ratio scale, you go for only for arithmetic mean, not for the all central tendencies. Only required central tendency you have to write. Mostly we write arithmetic mean. Similarly, standard deviation we follow as one of the best, statistical measure assessing the variability of deviation. Skewness and kurtosis, sometimes we know in order to determine the normality, we use skewness, whether it is positively skewed or negatively skewed. We know that in normal distribution is having zero skewness. Whether it is sometimes in a data we will not get an accurate 0 degree, zero skewness for data we will not get. So we get slight positive or slight negative skewness in the distribution. And sometimes in this case I have to tell something. Similarly, kurtosis. Let me finish kurtosis also. It is height of that is wickedness of the distribution, height of the distribution. Based on certain parameters, we may have platykurtic, low distribution, or leptokurtic, high distribution. That is most of the observations concentrated on the central part, then central area will be having height. So that distribution is leptokurtic. If everywhere data is distributed in positive and negative ends everywhere, that is low mark and high score, low score and high score, medium score, everywhere people are distributed more or less equally, then the distribution will be platykurtic. Now the point is that what I was talking, okay, skewness, regarding skewness and related to the normality. Once you get the data, you have to clearly check whether it is normally distributed, whether it is the normality is ensured or not. Then only you can go for the other. Initially, especially the researchers, those who are following the experimental families of designs, most of the time they will never attempt outliers. Removing of outliers is the significant attempt that a researcher has to do. There will be outliers. Suppose you have conducted an experiment and one student got 100 out of 100 in your examination, in your test, 100 out of 100. But most of the scores are concentrated between 40 and 70. Most of the scores are concentrated on 40 and 70. Then you have to remove the 100 because it is an outlier. It is at the extreme end and it will disturb your normality. It will disturb your entire data set. Sometimes people have a misconception, oh, how I select, he is a topper in the classroom. You are not talking about any topper, any genius student of the class. You are talking about the data set of the classroom. You are talking about the research data. In the research data, you are not supposed to use an outlier. So you have to remove the outlier. Different research softwares have their own parameters for removing outliers. Now SPSS, through SPSS generally we do box plot. Box plot we can do, and in box plot it will be depicted what are the outliers. Suppose you have collected 500 data, sometimes 480 will be the original data, 20 data must be the outlier. So it will be depicted here and there to show the outliers, and accordingly the cell you can identify and you can remove the data, then you can reorder. Complete data you remove and then do. Especially in the research based on the experimental studies, we identify that there is a huge difference of mean score. How this is possible? This is a question all the time. When we are, what is the parameter for experimental study? I'm just always arguing for this basically as a researcher or as a beginner on the research. I argue this. How many of the research supervisors observe that the research is properly happening? If it is a survey research, in one way or the other, you can identify through the response sheet. What about the experimental research? How many of you are there demanding the exact video recording of the researcher? They have taken 30 lessons or 40 lessons in the classroom as a part of, I'm talking about the experimental study in education. Sorry for the others. So this is what we do is in education, we just take two different strategies. One generally the normal strategy being practiced, any strategy being practiced in the classroom, and another one will be experimental strategy. Then how many of them are watching the entire 30 recorded videos? Without this, how can you validate that the researcher has properly done it? In research, as I perceived, is there is no compromise on data. There is no compromise on quality. So beautifully we write the thesis, but how many of the research scholars and research supervisors, I'm talking about supervisors, how many of them can rightly tell that you have witnessed all the 30 data collected by the student, or how many videos of these 30 experimental situations you have watched? Otherwise, how can you tell that? Similarly, most of the time they compare with activity-oriented teaching that is commonly practiced in the schools of Kerala. Everywhere we have the constructivism all over India. So, in a governmental setup, we have its policy, we practice it, but when you experiment it with an activity-oriented method, people say that this is a common method, people are not practicing properly. That is why I got a very huge difference between these two experiments. How can you say that? How can a researcher say that people are not practicing? You are the researcher, you have to practice the experimentation based on activity-oriented method with its full philosophy. For example, you have taken a brain-based learning, or say taken a experiential learning. So how do you practice it? With clearly focus on the steps and strategies that has been given in the experiential learning paradigm, whatever called or whatever it is. Whoever is given as per the clear-cut paradigm and strategies, you develop your lesson transcript. What about the other? What about the control group or the second experimental group? That is the activity oriented. Don't you have a framework? There is a framework. What is your strategy? This, most of the researchers are not bothered about this. Then they are getting huge differences. That is, activity oriented is not at all. This is experimented long and long ago. I mean, based on lots of efforts, they experimented and tested, pilot tested, and finally concluded, okay, this is one of the best strategy to enhance, especially for social skill, cognitive skills, emotional skill, life skills. People say that activity-oriented method is worthless, and they argue that their method, they highlight is highly visible. And my question to the experimental group of category, I'm also conducting experiment. My students are also testing on experiments. But my point is that how many of you can highlight, how many of your researchers are in a pedagogic strategy? How many of them have come or taken the place in the textbook of B.Ed or M.Ed? Answer will be no or zero, I think. If it is, if your strategy is successfully experimented, why don't you submit it to the policy makers to get it published? That is the research. Otherwise, what is research on experimentation? What is pedagogic experimentation? It is only 30 days class of yours and your promotion and PhD. Others, what will be the other relevance of this? I'm not saying that experiments are all flop, but we have to publicize it. We have to publicize and popularize the methodology. That is the only concern I have to do. We have to say that this is a significant strategy. This can be followed in these steps and it has to be popularized. We have to have a mechanism to do it. Now come to the inferential statistics that generally we know. Now, when we compare parametric and non-parametric tests, we can have this. One sample t-test is generally we compare a group of people and their mean score with a standard score. For example, anything, okay, achievement marks of SSLC examination, average is, for example, 32. Whether my students are with the average or they are significantly, there is a significant difference between my students' average and the state average. In that case, we generally go for a one sample t-test. If the sample is small, if it is not normally distributed, if the testing is not proper and the measurement is ordinal or nominal, better go for one sample sign test or one sample Wilcoxon test. Two sample t-test, we know that student T. Student T, sometimes people have a misconception. There are different types of T's we have. Paired T, independent sample T we have. Independent sample itself, today itself I read that independent sample t-test is, sample is independent, but better is you take comparable equal sample. Today I read, I'm not sure about the website or paper, but I have read it today that if you are comparing independent sample, any sample you can take, 100 and 200 you can compare. That is, sample is independent. But at the same time, better is to compare the comparable portions. Sometimes we compare is 80 and 72. So better we can, some data you can remove it because of the statistical calculations or purposes. You can remove some data and you can equalize the sample better. So if two groups we have a variable, metric variable, based on the metric variable, that is an interval scale or ratio scale variable. You have a construct and you are comparing two groups in terms of their score in a metric variable. We generally go for student T, that is independent sample t-test. The opposite, that is non-parametric calculation, is Mann-Whitney U-test. There is no error in calculating U-test. If the data is not proper, go for U-test. That is the most scientific way. If the data is not proper, going for t-test is the wrong way. Better is when you have a proper data, go for t-test or either or you just go for U-test. One way ANOVA, we know that if we have to compare one category and one sample. If we have one construct or one variable that is measured through metric scaling, that is either interval or ratio, plus the categorical variable is having 3 or more categories, and there should be specific number distribution. Then if it is a scene, then we can go for one-way analysis of variance. After one-way analysis of variance, when it is significant, we have to go for a post hoc analysis. Post hoc analysis. If the one-way analysis of variance is significant, sometimes people go for again t-test A and B, B and C, A and C. It is not recommendable. Better is go for better. No, it is the way is go for post hoc analysis. There is Duncan, Newman and Cooley, Sheffy, LSD. There are lots of tests available. You can go for any schemes of testing as post hoc analysis. It is actually doing significantly the mean comparison like t-test. So do that. If it is not possible, the sample is not all right, the variables are not proper, then go for median test or Kruskal-Wallis H test. Kruskal-Wallis ANOVA or Kruskal-Wallis H test. Then there are multiple variables you can take together, multiple variables together. You are comparing the achievement of boys and girls and rural and urban together. Achievement is the major variable, you have a metric variable, and you are comparing boys and girls and rural and urban. That is rural boys, rural girls, urban boys you have. So in this case, you have 2 by 2 factorial design. Your design is 2 by 2 factorial design. In this case, you can go for factorial ANOVA, 2 by 2 ANOVA. Like if it is non-parametric, it is Friedman test. Okay, now come to certain conditions. I'm not reading all this. You can just have a clarity regarding this. Number of, that is, once you Google it, you'll get it, all the things. Thing is that we have to have a mindset of doing it properly. Don't depend upon, don't rely upon any thesis of the previous researcher. Rely upon the sources, whether it is right or wrong, whether it is good or bad. Okay. Now come to the test of significance, test of relationship. We have many types of correlation. All times we are not supposed to do the product moment correlation, Carl Pearson's product moment correlation. No, it is not the only possible correlation. There are biserial correlations, point biserial correlation, Spearman's rho is there, Kendall-Stowe is there. Kendall-Stowe is similar to Spearman correlation, rank correlation, rank biserial correlation is there. Similarly, phi coefficient, lambda, all these are some of the correlation. This is metrically given as a matrix. You can compare interval or quantitative variable with interval quantitative variable. Only Pearson's product moment correlation is applicable. Pearson's product moment correlation is applicable. If one variable is ordinal and y variable is interval or vice versa, we are going for biserial correlation. If one variable is nominal, one variable is interval, if you would like to calculate correlation, it is point biserial correlation. Both are ordinal, both are rank based. We can go for Spearman correlation, that is Spearman rho, rank correlation, or Kendall-Stowe. Then rank biserial, nominal and ordinal. Both nominal, and you are going for calculation, that is phi coefficient and lambda. Based on the situation, you have to act. Don't go for a single type of strategy. See whether it's a kind of reasoning, whether I am using is right or wrong, whether my point is good or bad, whether mine is applicable. You are talking about, I mean, if you are a research scholar of PhD, if you are a researcher, you are a doctoral candidate, everything is visible in Shodhana after your submission and award of the PhD. So it is for the entire globe, it is being shown, okay, he has not properly taken the statistics. So we have to have it. When we talk about the regression, there are many regression, non-parametric regression I'm talking about. Binary logistic regression is the binary logistic regression, ordinal regression, lasso regression. These are the non-parametric regressions. Binary logistics, ordinal and lasso regression. We have linear and multiple regression general, and if the variables are not properly, we can go for logistic regression, ordinal regression, similarly lasso regression. That is, in regression also, I mean, I'm talking about the certain parameters of regression, assumptions of regression. People have an attitude that if both the variables are highly correlated, it is very good. It is not that way in a research point of view. If variables that we take, they are highly correlated, we are not supposed to go for higher order statistical calculations. In such a case, especially in regression, there is a chance of multi-collinearity. Multi-collinearity, there is a chance. If in regression we know that general linear regression and multiple regression, all the variables should be metric variables. In a sense, all the variables should be either interval or ratio variable. If the variables are having strong correlation between or among the variables, that leads to a false interpretation of your result and false prediction of the or equation will be wrong. Such a case is known as multi-collinearity. Let me repeat, when two independent variables are having high correlations, or there is a correlation between independent and dependent variable. I am talking about correlation is required, but very high correlation is not suggested. For example, 0.7 above correlation. If your predictor and criterion variable are having 0.7 above correlation, better not to go for regression coefficient. Not to go for regression coefficient because there is an issue of multi-collinearity. Similarly, when we talk about the our sample of the calculation, people say that 30 above is statistically large sample. But for regression kind of thing or for factor analysis, it is not suggested less than 200. Many authors have their own opinion. You just read standard textbook and standard discussion forums over website, then you will find out that minimum required sample size for different calculations. There are formula for calculating sample size. It's okay, it's another calculation. But when we talk about a regression or a factor analysis, better we should have more number of samples, then only it's possible. So multi-collinearity I explained. Now come to the sampling. I have already some issues or concerns we have to address. 1 minute. Yes, some issues or concerns we address. One is measurement. Measurement is always an issue. These are some of the issues that we commit and come across in the research studies. That is, sometimes sample is not proper. It is a flop actually. Sometimes people, okay, how title he has researched on this and that. Oh, very good. He is researching on some specific category. He is researching on marginalized. Oh, nobody has attempted on that. We cannot say blindly that seeing the title. What is the methodology? Whether the sampling is appropriate or not, whether the measurement is proper or not. Then only we can judge upon the quality of the research or reports. Okay, come to the sample. I told you significant number of sampling is required. That is not any specificity over there. If you are a researcher, you have to properly collect the data. Sometimes I tell you there are certain issues that research scholars do commit. What are the mistakes they commit is they are busy. Okay, I have my family, I am pregnant, or I have a feeding child, so how can I go to the field? Sometimes this excuses. Everything is human considerations we can give, but research is research always. There is no compromise in research if we are talking about a quality in terms of research. I am talking about quantitative research, but if we have a quality, we should have a quality in research. So this type of excuses should not be the researcher, in my point of view. In order to get a strong data, absolute data, the researcher has to collect the data by himself or herself, by the researcher itself. Don't delegate the research data collection to anyone. You have the integrity, you have the research spark in your mind, but they may not have. If it is giving, okay, go take the questionnaire, come back tomorrow, give it to me. Generally, we have this idea of writing. People are fed up with the research questionnaire and they will here and there, they will mark it, and all the purpose of the study, the effort of 5 years will be lost because you didn't get an accurate data. Once you collect the sample, be honest in the collection of the data. If you're not collecting, train a specific person. Well, you have all the based on the humanitarian concern, I can tell you, if you are not supposed to collect the data in a specific time span, give it to a trained person, train himself or herself, mediate in between. When they are in school, when they are in the field, mediate in between 5 times, 10 times, 20 times in a day to get the correct, accurate data. Then only you will get a complete quantitative data. Otherwise, it will be a nutter flop. Sometimes you will get a good data, others will be very loose, and they will be comment on that, they will write here, and then make sure that on the spot collect the data. Never ever give the questionnaire or tool to your student or respondent. Don't leave it and come back and collect it later. You will never get a strong data over there. One-to-one, give to the students or give to the sample, explain it properly, either individually or in a group, make it clarified, get it clarified each and every query, then you will get it correct data, then only the result will be all right. This is one of the greatest parameters that we have to take into account while dealing with a quantitative study. Otherwise, it will be flawed. Come to the measurement. When we talk about the measurement, there are certain issues in measurement. Measurement, people are not aware. When we use a term, when I can go for an opinionaire, a questionnaire, a scale. Sometimes people, especially the commoners, have all the day, everything is questionnaire. But there are tools, there are scales, there are, test is the, checklist is the, inventory is the, schedule is the, scale is the, various types of scaling is the, tests are the, inventory, lots of parameters we have, lots of measures we have to identify the construct among a group of samples. So what we have to test? If it is an attitude, of course, scale is used. If it is a skill, most of the time we go for a test. If it is personality, sometimes test and sometimes inventory. If it is an interest, we go for an inventory. Interest, we have inventory. Achievement, we have test. Intelligence, we have test. Skill, we have test. Attitude, we have scales. It is related. So we have scale. So every research scholar has to have a clarity. Once you go for a measurement or developing a measurement, you just read standard books on measurement. We have anesthesia, we have Gregory, we have Devellis. Lots of very good books are available in all the libraries. Devellis, anesthesia, Gregory, like books of measurement, especially some are dealing with psychological measurement, anesthesia and Gregory. In Devellis is explaining about common. There are many. Sometimes the sage publishers, like reputed publishers, also give or they come up with certain parameters and documents, monographs on developing scales. So we have to clearly do that. Now, analysis, I have already explained. In analysis, you have to have a clarity regarding what to do and what not to do. Like now, the validation and standardization of scale. This is also another scaling. I have already told you. Then regarding the scaling, once you read, if you don't know, if the researcher doesn't have an idea regarding what scaling I use, if you Likert scaling, what is the difference between Likert and Thurston scaling? You have to answer. If you use a scale, you have to answer. Why? What is your validity? What type of validity you have done? Regarding scaling, I read it recently that we have everywhere we use 5-point scale. It is not that way. It is if one is a beginner, he can read and write, and he can have an idea regarding everything, especially till the school level, including the higher secondary. We can give 5-point scale. 5-point scale. with my reading, with my textual reading I am speaking, it is required either 7, 9 or 11 point of Likert scaling if it is a mature, I mean literate, mature or literate adult. If you are talking about a construct of the teacher, never ever go for 5-point scale. Either experiment with 7-point, 9-point or 11-point scaling. That is suggested by most of the significant authors. You just read it. I'm just giving you a spark and you can read it, and let us discuss on these things also. Okay, now validation. People write a standardization. Generally, as far as my knowledge is concerned, standardization is a very big process, and it is generally the tool commercialization process generally through this standardization process. Very big sample we have to collect, and across the culture, across the geographical area, we have to collect the sample through random procedures of sampling, and then we go for calculations. Then only we can go for standardization. Otherwise, for a research study, better to use validation of the tool, not standardization of the tool. Again, we can have a discussion on that also. Now, come to the process of validation, some funny aspects of the validation and writing of the research scholars is, I have gone for content validity and face validity have been established. Anyone can write this sentence, content validity is established. How content validity, who are the experts who have contributed towards content validity? What is the content validity score of yours? What is the content validity index you have? There is a mechanism of content validity. It is not based on a thesis that is laid in the library or shelf of library. This is not your reference. What is the standardization process, from where you have referred it? I have referred the thesis of X. No, it should be a standard textbook or standard website. Otherwise, it is an utter flop. If you are a researcher of PhD, definitely you should have this kind of concerns in your mind. So stages of validation is to be followed. And regarding the pilot testing, there is an assumption, there is a certain consideration that if you are going to validate properly, you have to go for exploratory factor analysis if it is a scale, and then confirmatory factor analysis. If you are developing a scale, you have to have questions, and then based on the statements, you have to collect the data, and based on the data, you have to go for exploratory factor analysis to find out which variables comes in, which factor, how many factors are prominent. Like if you have already, if you adopted some tools and you use some tools for some purposes, then you can go for confirmatory factor analysis, because still you have to confirm whether it is as per the theory, whether it is being followed or not. So based on your sample, you have to go for that. And never ever go for the validation purpose with the final data. Sometimes people do collect the 500 data, and first 100 or 200 they will go for validation, they will use for validation. It is not at all scientific, and even it is the blender is being supported by the research supervisor. That is quite pity to see that. Research, validation and data collection, there are both are entirely different. We have to have a proper validation, and after the validation only you can collect the final data. It is, I already told you, research is not everyone's cup of tea. It is not everyone's business. Those who have a spark of research, those who are really interested in research, then only go for research as a career, or research as a course program of study also. This is my suggestion only. I'm not compelling anyone, but there should be a clarity regarding or scientific attitude behind the research. Now, preparation of norms also, sometimes people do the final collected data for the norm preparation, and generally what happens is all the diseases like that, they are in average category, It comes, but most of the time it happens because of the norm calculation based on the existing or the final data they have collected. Now, I'm coming to the end of the discussion. We should have a discussion. We should have certain softwares, and it is still doubtful that why the universities and colleges of India, we are not much advanced in terms of training the softwares. We are just always taking ranking, QS ranking, we are backward. NIRF, we are up to the level. Any ranking, we are not coming in the forefront. Only the premier institutions like IITs, IIMs, IIITs, and they have all the research software available. Lakhs and lakhs of rupees are required, especially if we are talking about any software like SPSL, around 6-7 lakhs. Even if it is full-fledged, I think it is around 10 lakhs is required for purchasing a software. But it will be forever if we purchase for an entire university system. We have to push on, we should have such softwares we require. There are many software people experimenting on. Python is a thing, and lots of software. Literally is the geometric is the SAS. Stata is the eViews. R is free, but no proper training is given to. Statcraft is the lots of software programs are available, but the universities and colleges or the system as a whole, we are not training or exposed to. We are not exposed to such sophisticated software. Once we publish or once we approach a publisher to publish an article, or we approach or submit a paper to a journal database or journal system, we'll get immediate rejection due to this kind of. We are not updated. We don't have a practice of users like writer assistant, Grammarly, Ginger like software. So we have to have collaborations, and especially I'm talking about the statistical reasoning. Significantly, we have to have statistical reasoning before applying any statistics in this in quantitative data. Similarly, tool development is not an easy job. It has to have proper, thorough understanding and thorough weightage we have to give to the development of the measures. Collaboration with institutional collaboration, university collaboration, global university collaboration is also required to update the information in terms of the research and trend. Then only we will get the trend. Manuals is not for simply writing the references. There are lots of things. I just forgot to mention some of the one element of the manual. That's usually in my talk I update. Sometimes people, for comparison of mean score, we use t-test and one-way ANOVA. If it is significant, American Psychological Association in 1994 explains that you can just simply search it now itself. If after my lecture, if you can, your device, you can just search it. 1994, American Psychological Association recommend that if you are calculating or comparing two mean scores of two groups, or more than two groups, if it is significant, it is not an end, you have to go for an effect size. Effect size, generally, we can calculate either Cohen's d or any other parameter we can see. Cohen's d is one of the, it is very simple calculation, but most of the time, even though it is explained in 1994, even 2020, most of the researchers are not using Cohen's d or effect size calculation in their analysis or writing of the report. So updates we have to daily or monthly basis. All the softwares and parameters are being updated. So we have to have an updated knowledge. So there should be forums of discussion. There should be meetings and collaborations in terms of research. Oh, this is all about my presentation. I don't know whether I could be able to give justice to my presentation. Anyway, with my limited knowledge and reading, I just give you an outline of this. Thank you. Now let us have a discussion.
Thank you, Samir sir. Shall we answer the questions in the chat box of Google Meet?
Yes.
Okay. Then the first question is how to collect data in this pandemic situation. It's from Helen ma'am.
Okay. Regarding the data collection, we generally face to face, that is, offline data collection is common for Indians or we people, we generally go for offline data collection. It is online data collection in many of the states. I'm talking about the foreign states. They use this online data collection earlier. But thing is that when we have proper parameters and proper self-explanatory kind of questions, then definitely it will be all right. But in India, it is a bit difficult because we cannot ensure the connectivity, we cannot ensure the proper sampling and all. If it is a school-based, more or less possible. Then again, there should be a strategy or a guideline from the part of the government. If some researcher approach your institution, you have to allow them to collect the data. Like government has to give direction to the school, then only they will allow. Because now most of the schools in Kerala, I'm talking about Kerala situation, they are online or there is a network, either WhatsApp group they have or either they are in some platforms. So this is possible, but to a great extent. But when we talk about the other adult data collection or observation studies, it is very difficult. So what we can do is we can tailor the kind of data now for the sake of, for the time being, we can do it, the available kind of research. Other research we have to, because we are struggling for life itself. Then after life only we have research. So for just for the time being, we can, all the possibility of the online mechanism we can use, and rest we have to wait, I think. Thank you.
One more question is in the same context, that is, in this pandemic situation, how to conduct an experimental study? Is it possible in online?
Experimental study concerning the limitations of the experiment, because now we are teaching online, whether the strategy can be converted into the platform, online platform like Google Meet or many other platforms. Can you, if, for example, if you are taking experiential learning, if experiential learning, can you do this kind of experiment with an online support? Because we are not supposed to go to the field and do it. So with a limited space, I think it's an innovation of the researcher. I am not talking about everything is possible, but something is possible because there are tools available. You have to work on different tools. You have to innovate certain tools. Then sometimes it is possible, but not all the experiments are not possible.
Another question is from Ashwati CK. She is asking, if the distribution is skewed, which test should be done? Parametric or non-parametric?
Okay, skewed distribution means, again, sometimes a little bit skewness is always possible because only normal curve is zero skewed. So possibility, the extent of skewness, if it is highly skewed and then we test the normality, mostly you will not get a normal distribution. So what we can do is we just go, based on the statistical concern you have, whether you are comparing, if you are comparing two groups, then better go for U test. If you are comparing the mean score of 3 groups, better go for H test. If it is a regression kind of thing, go for ordinal regression or logistic regression.
Then next question is from,
if it is, it is not at all normal, then better go for non-parametric test, any test of non-parametric based on your objectives and hypothesis.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from Ronnie S. Roberts. He is asking, is it possible to collect data over phone? Is it valid? I think he is asking. Data collection through phone.
Okay, through phone is also, because earlier also we were using telephonic interviews. Now telephonic interviews also, it is a medium of collection of data, telephonic interview and things. So it is possible. And again, you have to validate it. In order to validate it, or if somebody asks you whether you have properly collected, so better you just save the, record the audio, like better it's possible. Because credibility is sometimes questionable. So we have to record it and use it for purposes if required.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from Suresh Babu, sir. I will read out the question. Would you please explain the use of quantitative research paradigms in education. How could the researcher overcome the limitation of absence of insight to human behavior, which may cause limitation to the applicability of quantitative research paradigm?
Okay. I got it. Always there is a debate. Still, it is going on, and there is no consensus among this quantitative, qualitative debate and paradigms. But in qualitative, of course, it is one of the goods. But everywhere, when we are having quantitative or qualitative, we have to be very focused. Quantitative is very objective and oriented, and when it comes to the measurement, when you are talking about emotional intelligence, your measure should be very strictly followed. Suppose you are talking about any kind of behavior of an organism, like an individual or an animal. If you are taking a measurement, so you have to know what all are the activities, that is what qualitative researcher do. What qualitative researcher is doing, you just take the parameters and convert into the quantitative things. When the tool or measurement is accurate and all inclusive, the quantitative research is also all right. When qualitative research comes, if your capacity is not up to the level, you are not able to succeed in qualitative research. If it is quantitative, if you are not able to materialize the tool in a proper way, it is a flop. That is why most of the quantitative studies are not producing proper results, because their measurement is not proper. Measurement is errorful. It is not properly validated. It is not properly eliminated the unwanted items. The significant items are not included in the item. That is why quantitative methods are always doubtful. If the tool development is all right and comprehensive, I think the tool development requires more time in quantitative research. If frankly speaking, it requires more attention in quantitative. Then only you will get a proper analysis. Yes, I think.
Thank you. Next question is, yes, it's clear. I think it's clear. Then next question is about content validity and face validity. Is there any way to validate it, validating method in content validity and face validity, or there is any other method for that? I think it's about some statistical method for the computing validity.
Yes, yes. In content validity, talking about validity, we generally people write content validity and face validity. This two, content validity especially, this is based on the expert opinion. In every statement, we have to give on the right hand corner of the statement while validating. You just give 20 experts for validation. So whether this is deleted, this has to be deleted, this has to be retained, this has to be modified. 3 columns you have to give to each statement of your rough tool. Then once they write it, based on their writing, you take one statement. Statement number 1. Out of 20, 18 of them responded that this has to be retained. So of course you will take it. Then there is an index, content validity ratio, CVR. I'm not remembering the formula. It is based on the, it is based on the index. That is how many of them have collected the, opined that this item is required. How many of them opined that this is not required? Based on this parameter, we can have a formula and you will get a content validity ratio score. Then based on that, we can do it. Then other validity, we have lots of validity, criterion validity, concurrent validity. There are many other validities. Construct validity, we have construct validity. Then, 1 second. Okay, we have criterion related validity, whether a valid test is related to other measures of the same concern. Suppose for measuring emotional intelligence, there is already a test is there. But you thought that in a specific cultural context of Kerala, I am developing another test. Then in order to validate it, you have to you have to test it with another available test of the emotional intelligence. Both tests will be administered among the same group and the score will be correlated. There should be a strong correlation. Then only you can say that it is having criterion validity. There are many other measures also validity, concurrent validity, predictive validity. So we have to have some sort of empirical validation. Don't simply write that experts, I have given to expert and validated. It is the mere sentence, anyone can write. There is no evidence. But you should have an evidence of validation that is generally being done through empirical validation.
Next question is, which type of validation procedure is applicable for awareness test?
Okay, test awareness test. If test is an awareness test, generally there will be a right answer and others alternatives, right? Distractors. So in that case, we generally go for difficulty index and discriminating power. Difficulty index, to what level it is difficult. In studies we saw that we will have some difficult items, there will be average items, and there will be low difficult level items as well. Similarly, discrimination, those who know well and those who don't know well, that there should be a discrimination. So there is calculation of difficulty and discrimination index. Based on certain textbooks, I have read Devellis 1991. Based on his textbook, he explains that we have to take a larger group to validation, and as per the validation, if it is a test, you just take, for example, you conducted data among 200 students for validation. Then you just take 27%, score the entire data set, score the entire question paper or test. Then take the, arrange it in an order, either ascending or descending. Take the top 27%, that is out of 200 you will have 54. Lower level you have again 54. Then take both the responses and compare, take it as two groups and compare their scores in terms of how many of them have, in terms of discrimination index and difficulty index. Then we will find out which one is them. There are some criteria to eliminate which one has to be taken. If it is a scale type of thing, we just go for comparison, like t-test. We compare which group is, lower group and upper group will be compared based on each question, each statement. Then it will be validated. If it is, we have 1.96 as a mark in 0.05 level. If it is, you are taking 0.01 level only, then you can go for 2.58 and above. Then we are taking such statements as considered for the finals. This is actually we are doing. Then for test, we are going for difficulty index and discriminating power. Other than content validity. Content validity we have to do at any cost. Plus this we have to do for validation, that is item analysis. Then reliability, again you have to go for reliability. Don't go simply for the test retest reliability, the split half reliability. Go for test retest reliability always. Then only you will get a clear idea. Then again you have to administer for the norms. You have to develop norms among another 100 or 200 groups. Then only it will be finalized.
The next question is about multicollinearity. How can we calculate it statistically?
Statistically, by manually, I'm not sure about it. There is a test when you go to SPSS. When you take the SPSS, there is a point to check whether multicollinearity has to be checked or not. Then you can easily find out. But first, as a initial researcher, what you have to do is you check in a regression or in factor analysis. Also, what you have to do is check the correlation, whether there is a high correlation or not. If it is highly correlated, you are not supposed to go for further for regression. If it is still, there is a strong correlation, still you can check whether there is a multicollinearity. So in regression, SPSS like software you can do, and you will get a multicollinearity index. If it is successful, you can go ahead. Otherwise, better you just leave the calculation of regression.
Okay, next question. Next question is, when ANCOVA can be used?
Okay. ANCOVA is, I just forgot to tell that. ANCOVA is actually when you have a covariate and you are comparing. For example, let me tell you an example. Two, three examples. I just credit goes to Sansan Walser. I just attended his one of the webinars, so he has clearly given explanation. So I also got a clarity regarding that. It is when you have a comparison of boys and girls in terms of their achievement, and you are taking intelligence as a covariate. So the effect of intelligence should not be there in the achievement of boys and girls. You are comparing the achievement of boys and girls when the intelligence is a covariate. So you are taking the intelligence with you. That is, you are controlling the effect of the intelligence, and then you will not be getting any disturbance. Okay, you will not be getting any disturbance. So intelligence will be taken. So you are comparing. I am talking about one-way ANCOVA. That is comparing the achievement of boys and girls when the intelligence is considered as a covariate. If it is same one-way ANCOVA it will be if you are comparing the intelligence of boys and girls, if you are making covariate and covariate, that is intelligence and self-concept as covariate. There are two covariates, still it is one-way ANCOVA. When it comes two-way ANCOVA, if you are comparing the boys and girls from rural and urban background in their intelligence, when the intelligence as covariate, then it will be two-way ANCOVA. Let me repeat, when you are comparing the achievement of boys and girls from rural and urban background, and you have covariate of intelligence, then it is two-way ANCOVA. Here we have two considerations, rural, urban, that is the locality plus sex category, boys and girls. Then it is two-way ANCOVA. If it is one only there, it will be one-way ANCOVA. Covariate, anything you can have. It is not a matter in determining the name of the ANCOVA. Okay.
Next question is from Jayagumari teacher. She needs explanation about the use of MANCOVA.
Okay. MANCOVA, there will be multiple. I am not able to explain it now itself. I will refer and I will tell you. Okay.
Okay. Next question is about standardization of question paper. Which method is suitable to standardize a question paper? T-test or difficulty index or discriminating power? And is there any standardized value of DP and DI?
Yes. It is, I will share you a paper. It will be detailed out the values because I don't remember exactly the values. Yes, actually, difficulty index and discriminating power is required in terms of questions. It is not a T value. T value generally we go for scales only. Scales.
Okay.
Similarly,
that's all. I think
alpha, people in the Cronbach alpha, it is used when it is scale. Okay, here again, let me repeat. If it is a question paper, difficulty index and discriminating power is required. We have to calculate that. And the range exactly, I don't know, is now there is a standard, of course, there is a standardization, standardized figure. Then you can refer any textbook, even normal simple research methodology textbooks and measurement and evaluation textbook of the even we have that value. I'm sorry, I don't remember it now. Yes.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's very difficult to remember all numerical data. Sergeant sir, is there any queries in YouTube? Please. Yeah, sir, you're audible, sir.
Yes, sir. Okay. Oh, well, let me explain. Factor analysis actually, it is a dimension reduction technique. By name itself, it's a dimension reduction technique. There are two things I can explain you here. Generally, we have two types of factor analysis here. One is exploratory factor analysis and another is confirmatory factor analysis, CFA and EFA. If it is explanatory factor analysis, we have a factor. For example, I am going to experiment, or I'm going to develop a scale on self-concept. So I have self-concept scale and it has 10 questions in it. See, 10 questions. So I have to put all the 10 questions and collect the data from, for example, 200, 300 people, and I put it in factor analysis, and I will find out how many factors are automatically it will be there. How many factors are there? You can explore which factor is dominant, how many questions are in certain factors. So theoretically, we have certain assumptions and we are preparing certain questions based on the theory, but we may not sure that which question comes in which category. So based on the spread of the distribution or spread of the score, the system itself or the calculation itself comes as it will be, there will be an item weight and factor loading comes, and it automatically it comes to different categories, and accordingly we can assign certain names as well. Suppose three of them are in one category, and once you look into the three statements, you find out that okay, this is something specific about the self-awareness, so I can put it at self-awareness, or something about society. So accordingly you can fix it. This is exploratory factor analysis. If the concept is not attempted by you, it is a new scale, then you can use. If it is a confirmatory factor analysis, already people have standardized scales and you are using a scale, and you have to confirm whether, sorry, again I come to the earlier one. If it is exploratory, some items are not proper, you just remove the item and then you will get a finished scale. Actually, before developing a scale, we have to go for factor analysis at any cost. Now come to the confirmatory factor analysis. Once we have a factor, everything is all right, dimensions are fixed, still we have to check whether this is exactly same or not. Exactly it is coming or not. For that, we can go for, again, we can go for data collection, 200, 300, or based on a scale of any other person. For example, Rosenberg self-esteem scale is available. You collected 300 sample. You have to check whether exactly the factors are all right or not. You can just load factor analysis. You can identify how many, where it will be distributed. We can have. Similarly, one more is principal component analysis, PCA. Principal component analysis, which component dominates in the constructs in the specific variable, which one is dominated. In order to identify that, you can go for this thing. Basically, the answer to the specific question is that it is used for developing your scale and standardization of or validation of your scale. It is used. Okay, this is almost but inventory, as I perceived it is more comprehensive with specific thing. So if you have a kind of statements like scaling, you can go for scale type of standardization. If you have certain cases, if you have a different set of questions, then you have to treat in another way. Like a test, if you have the nature of the question depends. What type of questions, the response pattern, what is, then accordingly you can decide which you are going to use. If it is a scale type pattern you have, then better to go for t-test. If sometimes there will be a mixture of that. That is also depends upon the nature of the question. Level of knowledge means, can you clarify it? Sometimes level of, sometimes we identify the level. Okay, this is generally we identify based on the percentage, or like suppose if we identify there is a norms you have in scale. If 50 above, you can have 50 above. Okay, all the students have passed. If 60 above, they are in first grade. If 80 above, they are first grade with distinction. Suppose we have this kind of a criteria in the achievement, then you have to find out what level my students are. Then if you have, then based on the certain norms, you can identify. There is no requirement of any kind of statistics. Only sometimes based on the percentages you can identify. There is no requirement of proper statistics as I perceive. Okay, we can adapt if the tool satisfies your objective. Easy, better is adapting. Take the tool as such. If somebody has taken, for example, you are a PhD scholar, but an MD scholar or master dissertation, there is a wonderful tool. What is the, why don't you hesitate? Just take it, because if it satisfies your need, better take the exact, because that much burden will be reduced from your side. Development of a tool is not an easy job. So if a tool is sufficient for you, take it and develop the other one. Sometimes if it is not up to the level, then better, especially for the PhD or doctoral dissertation, better to develop something. If it is up to the level, use it as such. Yes. Okay, there will be in regression, we will not have p-values. I don't remember any p-value. No. There will be ANOVA. In order to identify the fitness of model, we will have ANOVA. ANOVA in order to identify the model. So once the model is all right, then only we can go ahead with the things. The thing will be p-value only. We have p-value. Once the p-value, that is the regression coefficient, is significant, then only we take it as one of the significant predictors. T, I don't know whether there is a T or not. I'm sorry. Okay, that I don't know exactly. Together, I think it's just not ANOVA is no, sorry, ANOVA. Okay, I don't ANOVA. ANOVA is not together. It's not possible. Once you identify there is a difference between X and Y, that is T is significant, or ANOVA is significant means again you have to go for another post hoc analysis. That is mean difference is significant. Once the mean difference is significant, then only you can go for effect size. If it is significant, then if it is not significant, okay, we can leave it. If significant, we are going for effect size. Generally, we use Cohen's D. So that is different, not exactly same. It is not in SPSS. We have to manually calculate it. I don't know whether in other statistical packages it's not there or not. But in SPSS, I didn't find it. It is simple. You can go the formula. If you just simply Google it, it is based on your mean and standard deviation of first and second group. There will be a thing. There is an effect size. Based on the effect size, we can tell also the effect is strong, average, or poor relationship, poor effect. That also we can justify.
Okay, sir. Thank you for the wonderful session. I think there are so many positive comments. Around 100, more than 100 comments are there regarding your nice presentation and simple language and simple examples. But there happened one problem is that while asking the question, my voice is not audible in YouTube channel. For that purpose, I just repeat the questions, but you need not to answer it. I have to read all the question. Okay, sir?
Yes.
Okay, then for the purpose of YouTube viewers, I repeat the question. What is the purpose of factor analysis is one question, and it is answered by Samir sir. And what is the difference in standardization of inventory and scale? It is also clarified by sir. Then which statistical analysis is used to identify the levels of knowledge, and it is also explained by sir. Then regarding adaptation of tools, he explained very well. And then regarding regression, should p-value, I think p-value, the question is regarding t-value should be always significant, or I think it is p-value should be significant regarding the ANOVA of the model fitting. Then effect size and and then effect size and ANCOVA mutually exclusive or not. Then he answered well that Cohen's D is used to explain effect size. Okay, that's all the question from the chat box, sir. And there are so many positive comments there regarding your wonderful presentation, sir.
Thank you, Sajal sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sajal sir. And Samir sir. Sir, there is two more questions in the Meet chat box.
Okay.
Shall I? Okay. The question is from Prasad sir. He is asking, what is the function of eigenvalue in factor analysis?
Eigenvalue, actually, greater than 1 we are taking, less than 1 we are not taking in deciding it. It is an index based on the relationship among the variables. Variables in the sense among different statements. Statements we call it as the latent variable in most like software. We call it as latent variable of a single sentence. Statements are known as latent variable. So this is an index based on the relationship. So eigenvalue more than 1 is generally we are taking into account.
Next question is from Renjusha madam. She is asking whether if we are adopting a tool, is it necessary to find out the reliability and validity of each dimension?
Okay. If we are making, suppose it is, I don't know whether there is a exact textual thing is or not. People say that if it is, even it is a validated, if it is outdated, for example, of 5 days back, if it is of 2015 or later, then it's okay, you can use, or before 2015 even, you can revalidate it properly. If it is you are adapting and something you are changing, of course you have to follow exact the process of validation, expert opinion, everything, content validity, everything you have to do it. Statistically, we have to do everything. Because for the sake of convenience of writing some questions, you have taken the questions of others, but you have added a few questions. But again, it is disturbed the whole scenario. So you have to go for the same kind of calculation.
That's all. Now it's time to render vote of thanks. I'm really excited. Okay, sir.
Yes, I will share soon.
Okay, now it's time to vote of thanks. The respected Dr. Samir Babu sir and all our dear participants. Actually, today's session was really an excellent experience. Samir Babu sir, you enlightened our minds through real life examples, and I'm sure the doubts and misconceptions in quantitative research are made clear through your presentation. Thank you very much for giving necessary advices for writing the need and significance, about discussion writing, and about citations and citation manuals. And I hope the participants will follow your valuable suggestions in their research. Thank you so much for accepting our request and spending valuable time with us in a fruitful manner. The comments in the chat box are revealing the same. It was an excellent session. Once again, from the bottom of our heart, we are expressing our sincere gratitude to you. Thank you very much, sir. And I render my sincere gratitude to our beloved principal, Ambli teacher, and our technoman, the technical expert, Dr. Sajan, sir, and my dear friend, Dr. Sedu teacher, and all our faculty members for giving their support throughout this venue. And I take this opportunity to express my sincere gratitude to all the participants. Thank you very much for your patient listening and active participation and cooperation. Thank you all. Thank you all very much. And now it's the end of the session, and we will meet tomorrow at 2 p.m. in the Google Meet. The link will be shared. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, all.
Thank you.
Okay, sir. Easily. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Definitely. Definitely, sir. It's showing their dedication to the profession and the academic exercise. We should appreciate it. Definitely, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, all participants.
Sergeant sir, shall I interfere? I am Dr. Vijay Kumari from Public Training College.
VGP, sir.
Yes, I am Vijay. There is p-value in multiple regression. It is for testing the significance of beta value, beta coefficients, whether it is 0 or not. For that calculation purpose, we are using p-value. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms.